Hola y buenos días. Yo soy el señor Morris. Soy el maestro de español. ¿Cómo están ustedes? Today, we'll start a new unit of instruction called Hábitats de los Animales. Now, during this unit, we'll look at animals, the groups that we put animals into, and the different places where animals live. Now, hopefully you'll already know most of the things that we're going to be learning during this unit. So all you'll have to do is learn the new words for what you already know, kind of like what we did last unit. Today, we'll start off with a review of what we talked about during the last unit, and then start to examine the groups that we put animals into. Do you guys already know something about that? We'll see. But let's get started, as we always do, with our opening song. Canten conmigo. Hola, hola, buenos días, bienvenidos, ¿cómo están? Todos juntos ya estamos listos para aprender. Muy bien cantado. Now, as I said, we'll start today's lesson with a review of things that we studied during the last unit of instruction. So let's start off with this question. ¿Cuáles son los hábitats de las plantas? And we talked about that last unit. ¿Cuáles son los hábitats de las plantas? Well, let's review real quickly. The first one that we talked about had a lot of trees in it. You can see there's a lot of animals that live around in this area, right? What would we call this in English? The forest. Now this one should already be in your Spanish notebooks. El bosque. Repitan todos. El bosque. That's right. Then we looked at this one. And again, these are in your notebooks already, I hope. If they're not, you might want to jot them down because we'll refer to them again. Es el desierto. El desierto. Repitan todos. Now that one's pretty easy because it's another cognate, right? Yeah, for the desert. We looked at this one. El océano. Repitan todos. El océano. And you see that accent there. That means we stress that one, right? Again, it's a cognate. Boy, there are a lot of things living in there, too. How about this one? Do you remember what this was in English? Yeah, a pond, right. And look at some of the things that live there. En español es la charca. Repitan todos. La charca. That's right. Well, those were the plant habitats that we talked about during our last unit. Now, just as we divide the different types of plant habitats to make them easier to talk to, we also divide up the animals into different groups so that we can talk about them. Okay? And we do this with a lot of things. Let's go ahead and start with this group, okay? Just to be sure that you understand what we're talking about in English, the first group is composed of animals that have fur on the outside. Fur on the outside, yeah. They have claws. Now, these are warm-blooded animals, and they're born alive, as opposed to being born from eggs. In English, we call them mammals. And you can see some of these here. Right here, right? A cow. What's this one? Here he is munching on a little stick. A beaver. Oh, the king of beasts. A lion. How about this one? A bear. And you can see that they all have fur on the outside. And they all have some sort of claws or nails of some type. Right? Those are all mammals. The next group of animals have feathers. Now, these are warm-blooded animals too, but these animals are born from eggs, right? We call them birds. Now, you don't have to jot this down in your Spanish notebook because this is pretty much English. The next group have scales on the outside, right? They're cold-blooded. That means their temperature changes with their environment, and they live in water. These are the fish, right? That's another group of animals that we're going to talk about. The next group also has scales on the outside, right? Okay, they're cold-blooded just like fish, but this group doesn't live in the water. Examples from this group include snakes like these, or lizards, right? These are called reptiles. Reptiles, and you've probably heard of all of these before, right? Then there are these animals that are cold-blooded, only they have smooth skin. They're often born in the water, but they move onto the land when they grow up. An example would be a frog. Have you ever felt a frog's skin? It's kind of smooth, kind of slimy, huh? These animals are called amphibians. Amphibians. Now, there's one more group that's a little bit different from the other groups that we've been talking about because they don't have a backbone like all of the other animals that we've been talking about. As a matter of fact, you might not even consider them animals. Examples are ants, flies, grasshoppers, and we call all of these creatures insects, right? Or sometimes we call them bugs. Well, these are the groups that we're going to be talking about today. Well, let's learn the names for these groups in Spanish. So you'll want to go ahead and get out your Spanish notebook so that you can jot these down because we're going to refer to them from time to time. Now, the first group had fur on the outside, remember, and claws. And we said that in English they're called mammals. In Spanish, they're called mamíferos. Repitan todos. Mamíferos. Okay, go ahead and write this down in your Spanish notebook. Don't forget the accent mark right there for mamíferos. Okay, do you have that one? And remember, these are the mammals. The next group that we talked about, we said it has feathers, and they're born from eggs, and we call them birds. En español se dice aves. Aves. Right. Go ahead and write that down into your Spanish notebook. Aves. Try to say the letters as you're writing it down too. A, B corta, E, S. Aves. Okay. Next group that we talked about were fish, and we said they have scales on the outside, and they're cold-blooded, and they live in the water, right? Fish. Well, in Spanish, we call them peces. Peces. Peces are fish. Go ahead and write that down. Peces. Can you say it? Peces. Okay. Then we talked about the animals that have scales, like the fish, but these guys live on land. Remember, like the snakes and the lizard here? Remember that in English we said they are reptiles. Well, in Spanish, their name is a cognate. Se llaman reptiles. That's how you spell it in Spanish. Pretty easy, huh? So go ahead and make a note of this in your Spanish notebooks. Reptiles are reptiles. So that you can see that it's spelled exactly the same, but it's pronounced a little bit differently. Reptiles. Because remember, those vowel sounds are always pronounced the same in Spanish. The next group of animals had smooth skin, right? Like the frog here. Okay. Now, these are called amphibians in English. In Espanol, it's also a cognate, son anfibios. Can you say that? Anfibios. Go ahead and jot that down in your Spanish notebooks. Now, you see, instead of the PH, they have the F there. and instead of an M, they have an N. Anfibios. Amphibios. Yeah. And the last group that we talked about, we said that might not be considered animals, the things like the ants and the grasshoppers and all of those, and we said we call them insects. Pues en español, su nombre es un cognado. Son insectos. Insectos. Okay? Hopefully you got all of those jotted down in your Spanish notebook today. Now, one of the things that I want you to remember is to write those accents in there, because that tells you what syllable to stress. Okay? Do you guys know how to count syllables? Okay. One of the best things that I found to do is to clap out the word as you say it. You can count every time you clap to find out how many syllables it has. Like mammal. Count that out. Mammal. It has 2 syllables. You can do the same thing in Spanish by clapping out and counting the syllables. So try the word mamífero. Okay? Mamífero. How many syllables? Mamífero. Has 4 syllables. Now, make sure that you know that, because in Spanish, you have to stress the right syllable, and that's why you stress the second syllable. You can hear you clap louder. Mamíferos. Okay? So you practice that. Remember that in any word, every syllable has its own vowel. Okay? So that'll help you along. Well, you know what? We're going to be going over all that again during the unit. But now that we've covered all of that for today, let's go ahead and go over our TPR's activities to see how well you remember that. Teachers, go ahead and get your classes arranged to participate in this TPR activity, however it's most convenient for you, whether everyone does it or just a few people. Okay? Y ahora, pongan atención y participen todos. Muy bien. Let's go ahead and start our review. You guys get your chairs all arranged. And students here, ¿listos? Párense. Muy bien, siéntense. Ajá. Párense. Brinquen. Ok, muy bien, basta. Voltéense. Muy bien, voltéense. A ver, caminen a la mesa. Caminen a la mesa. Muy bien. Escuchen. Corran a la silla y siéntense en el piso. Corran a la silla y siéntense en el piso. Muy bien. Párense. Siéntense en la silla. Okay. Let's see. Do you remember this one? Canten. La, la, la. Okay. How about this one then? Lloren. Muy bien. Well, let's try this one then. Let's see. Uriel y Joseph, siéntense en el piso. Uriel y Joseph. Siéntense en el piso y voltéense. Voltéense. Oh, muy bien. Ahí está. Muy bien. Párense y siéntense aquí en la silla. Ok. A ver. Emilia. Párate. Siéntate encima de Aaron. Siéntate encima de Aaron. Aaron, llore. Uy, la pobrecita. Siéntate aquí en la silla, Emilia. Okay, you guys, students, go ahead and get these vocabulary words. See if you can put them together in different ways and see if your classmates can follow what you're telling them to do. That's all we have time for today. Muchas gracias. And what do you think we should tell them?
Adiós.
Adiós. Hasta luego. Those guys do a great job. I hope you guys are practicing and doing as well as all of them. Ahora, saquen la hoja de actividades llamada Hábitats de los Animales. Okay, here you go. Go ahead and start off, as always, by putting your name up at the top. Write your name in Spanish. Roberto. How many syllables in my name? Roberto. 3. That's right. You guys can practice that when you get a chance. Now, the directions say, fill in the word in the spaces provided. Read the word in the box going down to discover what we will be studying this unit. Let's go ahead and look here. You can see that I have all of these clues around here for you. And then down at the bottom I have the key. Okay, so you can use these. Now, you can go ahead and start off by trying to do number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., all the way around 6, 7, 8. Or you can do the ones that you know. I found something that really kind of helps me, okay? And that is, if I come over here and I see, oh, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This word is going to have 4 letters for this group of animals. Now, if I look down here, I can see that there's only one word in my key that has 4 letters. Can you identify that? Can you see what it is? Aves. 1, 2, 3, 4 letras. So I know that I'm going to write this word up in number 1. Here we go. A, B corta, E, S. Aves. Now once I've done that, I can cross this out. But if you wanted to, you could also go and fill in the ones that you know. Okay? For example, these two are habitats that we talked about during the last unit. The pond and the forest, right? Well, let's see. Do you remember what the forest was called in Spanish? I'm going to show it to you here. Do you remember what the forest was called in Spanish? Well, we can look down here into our key. Do you see it anywhere? Bosque. Bosque. I'm going to go ahead and write that then on number 8. Okay. B larga, B, O, S, Q, U, E. Bosque. So if you continue to fill in all of these clues across here, based on the pictures around there, you'll get a word coming down this way that you'll be able to read in Spanish that'll tell you what we're going to be studying in this unit. All right. And as always, go ahead and do these activity sheets whenever your teacher says there's time, whether it's right after the lesson, working together, individually, later in the day, or taking it home. Okay? Today, we reviewed the plant habitats from last unit and then looked at the groups that we put animals into to talk about them in English and Spanish. Hopefully that was familiar. Next class, we'll talk about some of the members of one of the groups that we talked about today. So see if you can brainstorm some individual animals and which group they belong to. We'll be talking about mamíferos. So try to think of some mammals before our next class. Pero saben que ya es hora de despedirnos. For our goodbye song today, let's sing El Rancho Grande. Let me get this guitar here. Canten conmigo. Allá en el Rancho Grande, allá donde vivía. You can say the aha part if you want. Había una rancherita que alegre me decía, que alegre me decía. Te voy a hacer tus calzones como los que usa el ranchero. Te los comienzo de lana, te los acabo de cuero. All right. Until our next class, adiós y hasta luego. ¡Ajá!